Hey everybody, it's May 23rd, Monday, and this is Chanchai. And this is Chanchai's Dojo episode, let's call it episode 1A. This is, we're appending to episode 1. Episode 1 I talked about some simple reads you can do, right? And I wanted to clarify at least one of them. So, but the simple reads, to break down what I talked about in episode 1, I said, you know, the first real basic one is kind of the one you do at low level play that applies to all levels, and it's just determining if your opponent is being too aggressive or too defensive in general, since it's just very unlikely that they're going to be that optimal at developing levels, and so usually they've got a bent where they're too aggressive or too defensive, and so you want to take advantage of those opportunities that they give you. Then the second, you know, after that I said then we get into more specific situation reading, and those more specific situational reads would include, I think the first one I picked was the one that I like. Let's see, which one was that? There's so many different reads. I'm kind of drawing a blank right now as to which ones that I covered in the last video. But one of those reads was, we'll reorder this a little bit, but we'll go to what I remember was the next read, which was Fudo's favorite read, which was the evade logic of the opponent, understanding if the opponent likes to, you know, basically, are they evading based on a preference, a personal preference of pressing up or down, because that has an effect on the way that they input, and so they just might have a side where they feel they're better, so they do that. And then there's also the one that's more gameplay correct, which would be based on your character's front or back side. Whether your character's front, which direction is your character's front facing, the chest facing, or which direction is your character's back facing. And that one is more correct. You know, if you fight against Leon, you should evade to his back. And if just by doing that, you would actually cut off a lot of sources of damage from Leon automatically. So there's that. The logic that I did go before that, the situation read that I really wanted to cover today, was the one that was a personal favorite of mine. It's the opening. So when I discussed that in the last video, one of the problems with that was I kind of glossed over what exactly you're looking for, right? I mean, I said what you're looking for, but about how you process it. And so let's talk about how to process the opening move and why I think it's one of the easier reads. It's one of the easier reads because you can get a sense of what your opponent likes to do in the most fixed situation in the game, which is in the opening moments of the round. And what they like to do with their inputs the moment that the announcer says go, right? And so the first thing you want to look for is, are they aggressive? Do they prefer to be aggressive? You know, the first time you see it, you have to wonder about it. Second time you see it, then you're like, maybe this is what they like to do. Third time you see it, maybe you're like, okay, they always go aggressive. They always pick a proactive. There's no wrong. It's not wrong to be aggressive at the opening. I love going aggressive. So you want to determine if your opponent really, really does have a leaning toward being aggressive, and you can decide to either be passive against that, or you can decide to be more aggressive and just crush it, or speed it based on the range as well. And as I talked about in the last video, in the opening of the round, there is a fixed spacing, and the spacing at the opening of the round is just outside of elbow range. So because of that, it plays different than the most common situations in Virtua Fighter. The most common situations in Virtua Fighter are really jab range, elbow range, and side kick range. And this range is a little in the middle between elbow and side kick, the opening range. And so that's why, as I gave examples in the last video, Kage's 4P, which means back and punch, is a really good move for the opening just because of its speed, its sheer speed, and its reach. But, you know, it is a high attack, so it loses to low attacks. Alright, so You're looking to see how aggressive your opponent is. You're also looking to see, are they very passive? Do they like to defend? Do they like to stand still? Do they like to backdash? Do they like to backdash, evade, backdash? Which is where they cancel the first backdash into a sidestep, and then they cancel that sidestep, the failed sidestep, into another backdash. And there are options you can do there. So, are they more defensive oriented? Leon has some good full circular long range moves in his 6 kick plus guard, or forward kicking guard, and then also in his diagonal down forward kicking guard, which in numeric notation we say 3 kicking guard. Leon has long range circulars, and so he can really force a mid-low from long range if the opponent is not expecting it, and then even if they were expecting it, if they're not able to react properly and defend the right way. By the way, bonus tip, Leon, those 2 circular attacks of Leon, even though he does shout and they are long range and they're very annoying to deal with, technically you can actually determine them by sound. He shouts differently between those 2 attacks, and if you close your eyes, you could actually train yourself to block the correct way based on hearing that. However, in actual match experience, it's really hard to do this because you have to kind of be primed, kind of expecting that he's going to do that kind of mix-up on you. But if you start to know those situations, that's another situation to read. Anyways, back to what we were talking about. The situation that we're reading is the opening move. Are they aggressive? Are they more passive? Very important distinction. And then, are they balanced? Are they doing it because they're just trying to read me, right? Do they properly mix it up? Or is there just no way for me to tell? That's okay too. That's still a read. Uncertainty and certainty are factored into your reads. And if you're uncertain about something, it's okay. I recommend just getting used to working with uncertain knowledge sometimes, but usually it just means you have to test the knowledge a bit more. You have to test the situation more to dig deeper into the truth of what's really going on with your opponent. Why are they doing what they do? You don't need to fully understand all of that, but as you pick up on clues, it helps guide you to better responses to your opponent. So now that I've said aggressive and passive at the opening, then we can go into a little bit of a finer detail. What move do they like to do in the opening? And I talked about this just now, but if they're aggressive, is it a Kage high elbow because it's such a good opening move? Do they like to mash punch, punch, punch? If they're Leon, do they like to start with like that long range sweep or the long range spin kick, right? If they're Lao, do they like to do knife into like 3 PPP and then try to mix it into a mid or low from the end of the string? Try to understand, is that what they like to do, and what is their favorite way to do the opening if they're aggressive? Okay, how about defensive? What is their favorite way of doing defensive? I will tell you, at a higher level, you see a lot of people starting with backdash, evade, cancel, backdash. Very common one. And Leon has a good answer for it because but then some people start learning the counter plays for even Leon's long range sweep. So when I fight Deniso 201, he'll figure out the character's low crush, and he'll backdash into a low crush, just to kind of anticipate I might do that. And so then he's using, now when he does that, what he is doing is he's using he sees that I'm reading that he likes to do passive opening. And this is where we get to the Yomi layer 2 and 3. So he knows that I'm going to sometimes do something to counter that. So this is his plan to counter that counter. And that is the fun of VF. That's the fun of reading. It's very simple. It's not that hard actually, but the more situations we get more and more comfortable identifying, and the more we get comfortable mixing up in those situations, figuring out what some good options are, and then mixing those up, then it becomes more of a muscle memory and not so much of a conscious effort. So in the future, I'm going to do a video about focus. What is focus? Sneak preview. Focus is mental energy. Let's think of it like that way. And you spend mental energy like an energy bar in a fighting game. You spend it, you maintain it, you manage it when you play fighting games. Focus is really important, and when you play a game like Virtua Fighter, there's a lot of mixing up and a lot of reads and a lot of I'm countering what my opponent's countering, and we're looking for awareness and alertness, because we're already talking about reads, then we're also talking about how you deal with people who are reading you. Focus becomes one of the most important resources that you have to manage, on top of your life bar, on top of ring positioning, on top of the clock, on top of just understanding your options. There is such a thing as managing options, we will eventually talk about. That's more of an intermediate topic. But for now, let's keep it back to reads, but I was just a sneak preview that I will eventually talk about focus, because it's a huge topic. But today, again, I'm appending episode 1. This is episode 1A, and I really did want to talk about that situation in the opening, where you want to have an idea, is your opponent more aggressive or more passive? And then after that, which way do they like to do that? Like, what is their preferred way, and what are maybe their 2 or 3 favorite options? And from there, you can kind of start testing stuff out. In fact, that is the best place to test options out and to see if it works at that range, is the opening. It's a fixed position. It's very repeatable. You can write in your notes. You can write in your notebook. You can write in your notebook app. Basically, like, okay, this is a good answer against that. I fought a Kage that likes to start with 4P, and I found out that I have a low combo launcher. It's a really good option if I really want to gamble, but I'm not really certain of it, so until then, maybe I'll do a safer low punch, something like that. So just take the time to kind of engage in figuring out some ideas that you have and test them in matches and in practice for these situations. I focus on these simple situations and just a few, so that you can do, so you can have fun exploring and finding these answers and thinking about your opponent in terms of reads. Instead of thinking of your opponent as always being locked down by the same one thing, understand that when your opponent thinks that they can lock you down with the same one thing, that they're going to be in big trouble if you have a counter for it and they don't adjust to that. VF is a game where you have to constantly adjust. You have to constantly VF is a game where you have to constantly adjust, and you have to constantly kind of stay on top of it, but it takes a while to get there. And so while you're developing, what you're doing is you're building your repertoire. You're starting to gain experience. You're learning how different moves interact, so that, and then you repeat some of these experiments you do on the field, and you do it enough times so that it becomes a reflex, and you start to find the best ways to deal with different moves. And that becomes a little bit of a reflex, but also you start adding in mix-up options to keep it fresh, to be able to, instead of when he does this, I always do this, it becomes when he does this, oh, it's either A or B or C, and I can do that just like that. I can do C right now, I can do B right now, I can do A right now. That's how you become more mix-up strong. That's how they might feel that you're being random, but you're just mixing up appropriately at the right times. And that's what's going to take your VF to the next level. So yeah, while you're developing, you want to cut down on errors. You want to figure out what are errors in this game, and what are the drawbacks of the things I do. But just because something has a weakness, it doesn't mean it's bad in this game. It just means you need to put it in the right place. If an opponent is just standing there and guarding, then doing a normal hit launcher is generally a bad idea. But if the opponent is conditioned to keep attacking, like they're afraid of you throwing them, and you keep throwing them, at some point they're going to want to start hitting, because they're tired of, especially if you successfully throw them like 3 or 4 times in a row, they're going to get really frustrated and feel like the guard throw escape just doesn't work anymore, so they're going to want to hit you out of the throw. And at that point, that's where your launcher becomes really strong, and they might be trying to do a normal hit launcher because they want to combo your throw. That will lead to the topic of conditioning, and we'll talk about that sometime. Anyways, to cap this off, let's review the situations from video number 1, from Chanchai's Dojo episode 1, and those were too aggressive, too passive, opening, and when they're in the opening, are they aggressive openers? Are they passive openers? Are they kind of a bit of both? And then for whatever ones those are, what are their favorite opening moves? And maybe I can take some notes and practice against those opening moves in the opening. Okay. Then, Fudo's favorite read, which is what is their evade logic and which evade are they likely to do? So is it the preference logic, which is I like to press up because it feels comfortable doing up and cancel the evade from there? Or does your opponent prefer to press down? Or do they use the game logic, which is front and back? And if they're doing that, you can also extend the read to, are they evading the correct direction against my character? Are they making it easier for me to do my big stuff, or are they making it harder for me to do my big stuff? That's the real question there, and that will give you a lot to work with about. Okay, and then we had another situational read, which is one that I really like to encourage in the beginning. In the intermediates, you might be less, so you have to change it to a different move. But in the beginner, and even at some of the high level, you have a lot of low punch. And so, when my opponent likes to do low punch, when I block their low punch, what do they usually like to do? This one tends to have like a very strong answer and then a backup, something they'll pivot to. And that's why I use that example, because it's an easier read to do based on moves, but it's such a common situation that you'll get to practice it a lot. Though this past weekend I played in the Kai League, and a lot of people were just not doing low jabs, and that helped. Actually, that was to my benefit that they were not using low jab much. I think when you get to a certain level of intermediate play, everybody's got a response to low punch, so you kind of stop doing it. Also, they're fighting Leon, and now they know, okay, if I low punch, Leon's going to 8K, so that's why they don't do it against me much. So now I can't really read that as much because they're afraid to low punch. So now I just switch it to another thing. What do they like to do after the elbow? What do they like to do after the most common attack that's happening in our match? And it's easier to read that from when you block it, but if you can start reading it from other situations, it'll help you a lot. It'll keep your mind active. It will use up focus, but this is focus well spent because it's going to make you a stronger player. So again, don't forget all these real basic situations. We're going to talk about more read situations in the future, but for now, I think it's a lot of food for thought already. It gives most people would give them a week amount of enough work to do homework for about a week, and so enjoy. I just got home, and I do hope to do another video, an official episode 2 of the Chanchai's Dojo series, and I do still want to do some story times with Chanchai. And just also to address a question, Sorensen had suggested that I do more like tutorial videos with demonstration, and I do intend to do those. Chanchai's Dojo episode 1 and this append are ones that I believe I can talk to in a more podcast-like format, so you can listen to this while you're doing your chores, while you're at work and not getting in trouble because of that, while you're driving, if you're not looking at the video, which is like what I did here for the most part. So I think it's a nice way to enjoy and learn more VF on your spare time, is when I can sometimes do it as a discussion, as conversation, or as sharing wisdom. And even though it's just words, I think I can still allow you to kind of picture what I'm talking about. And I think if you've been playing VF, I think you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think you're going to enjoy content like that sometimes, in the mix, you know. I wish I could watch all the videos and all the match videos that are out there. I don't have enough time in the day to watch all of them. And I wish I could remember them. I'm not the type that remembers like that much. I have to rewatch a lot of things, like a lot to process. I will do videos with video demonstration. 100% going to do that. It's going to be really important in Chanchai's Dojo. But every now and then I really like to do something like this where we can talk about the mindset and we can talk about the concepts. Because the important thing about a concept is that it's in your mind and that it's forming a picture and it's forming wisdom and guidance in it. You know, there's a reason that this concept is the way it is, or there's a reason why a lot of times people find the same answer in certain things, and concepts help you develop that. So we're going to keep working on that too, and we'll discuss that in many different ways. So again, this is Chanchai signing off Thank you very much. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Enjoy your VF practice, and feel free to comment and let me know what you would like me to talk about, or if you're feeling frustrated or you want to talk about the mental game of Virtua Fighter. So I'm very happy to talk with you on this journey too. All right, cheers. Have a good one.